tech issues, peeps. We're working on this here. Hi, this is Anna, and this is Check It at the Round Table, where we discuss movies, books, music, and stuff. Today is our first Videographed podcast, peeps. So we are doing both an audio and video version of this. I think we're going to upload it to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Instagram, yeah. But today we are discussing Bad Buddy, episode 8 of the Thai BL drama series. This aired this Friday. English subtitles at the premiere. I was able to participate. I was like, yay. So anyway, by GMMTV. You can watch it for free on YouTube. I will also drop a playlist link that I've collected all the episodes in order. They're usually in 4 parts, and I compile a playlist so you can just play it through if you want to binge watch without having to go, which is episode 6, part 3 of 4. So anyway, this episode, I think, is one of my favorites. I really am liking this series more than almost any other Thai series I have seen for this genre. I still have to say, Amwa, still my favorite. I mean, you really can't beat Amwa. I mean, I would love to see that someday, but Amwa is just awesome. For those of you who don't know, Amwa is Until We Meet Again, the Thai BL drama series that came out about 2 years ago now, in 2019. 3 years ago now. We're going into 2022. Okay, yeah. Anyway, though, Bad Buddy, why is this Anna's favorite almost of all the Thai BL drama series? I think it's because this series is very different. The one thing that I keep hearing across all the feeds, all the chats, all the comments is this series from Thailand is very, very different. And I think the reason is we're telling a story about 2 kids who grew up together. They lived in houses right across from each other. Their parents hate the living daylights out of one another for really not a good reason. I mean, it would be nice if you had a good reason maybe to explain why they have this loathing. But I guess what happened is the one kid's dad had he had a business, and all the workers went and started working for the other kid's dad. And because of this, they loathe each other. The dads do, and the moms. And the thing that has happened is Pat and Pran have grown up in this environment of people hating one another for not a really good reason. I think the saddest thing of this whole series is the family dynamics for Pat and Pran, except for Pa. Pa is Pat's younger sister. She's awesome. So, I mean, she is excluded from this judgment call. But Pat's parents, Pran's parents, they all need to just go chill for a while. I don't know. It's just maybe take a backstory. Maybe it'll calm them down. But anyway, the whole thing is they hate each other. And Pat's friends and Pran's friends also hate one another because they're in rival faculties at university. Pat is in engineering, Pran is in architecture, and there's constant fighting among the different groups, whether you're talking about their friends, whether you're talking about your families. It's constant struggle. But in the midst of all this, Pat and Pran are now dating. And I realize I did skip episode 7. I'm going to go back and do a review of that. But they have started to date. And I think this is one of the most interesting episodes so far because you get to see what they consider dating and also what they consider romantic, which is quite funny because Pat and Pran are now conking together in Pran's room because Pat's sister, has moved in with him, and he doesn't like sharing the room with his younger sister. So he's been staying over at Pran's house. Now, they have not been doing anything except conking together, which is kind of funny because you're going, oh, they're so passionate, and they're just conking together. But anyway, it opens up with Pran waking up holding Nong doll, which is Pat's doll from childhood, which he cannot sleep without. So it has moved over to Pran's house. And he's smelling something cooking, and he's going, there's a fire. Someone has lit the house on fire. What are we going to do? And so Pran is waking up very stressed out, and Pat comes in holding a tray of sausage and some food, etc. And he's trying to be so mature, which for Pat takes a lot of effort because Pat is not he's not particularly mature, although I do have to say he's kind of the wild card of this series. I'll do a little bit about that later. But anyway, so he has made Pran breakfast and he wants to be rewarded. So Pran puts ketchup all over his mouth and then attacks Pat to bother him, which is kind of hilarious, to be quite honest. So anyway, they have that moment. Then Pan finds out that Pat has torched his kitchen and lit a sausage on fire, which kind of just spoils the mood. And then they run out of Pran's house and Pa is waiting for them. And I think this scene is one of the most interesting. I don't know why, but I really understand Pran. It's kind of like when I first saw To My Star with Jin Woo, I was like, you know, this character, I get. They're difficult. They don't really express themselves, but they do try really, really hard. And I think it's in this scene when Pran is trying to lock his door up. Pat says, can I hold your hand? And Pran just jumps Pat's hand. He's like, no, you cannot hold my hand. And Pat's like, okay, I didn't know this would cause a huge disaster to occur. And so Pat's sitting there going, I don't know what I did wrong. I was just going to hold the hand of the person who I'm trying to date. I didn't know this would cause trouble. There's no one else in the hall. So, you know, if that's the issue, I don't know why this is causing him stress. And anyway, Pran looks at Pat and goes, I need some time to process this. It's not that I'm against holding your hand. It's simply that I need time to think about that and adjust. And then perhaps we will reevaluate and go back and I will hold your hand. And Pat's like, okay, all right, that's okay. And then Pran walks like maybe 3 feet forward. And then he reaches back and goes, I'll take your hand now. And Pat's like, you'll take my hand now, but you wouldn't take it like 2 minutes ago. And Pat's like, I needed time to adjust. I've adjusted. I'll take your hand now. And anyway, during this whole process, Pa comes out and then Pran immediately drops Pat's hand and Pa comes and kind of puts her arms around both of them and they walk down the hall. And I love this scene because Pa is in between Pat and Pran, who Pran saved Pa when she was a child. She would not have lived if Pran had not saved her from a ditch because she was drowning. And so you've got Pa between Pran and Pat, and they're holding hands behind Pa. And it's just kind of a wonderful scene because you get to see the dynamic of the families getting along, even though the rest of the family isn't, which is absolutely delightful. We then go to Pat has decided he is going to be in the architecture play so he can be near Pran. And Pran is upset because throughout this episode, Pat keeps posting pictures on social media and putting #JustFriends on Instagram. Pran does not like this because he's like, if our parents find out we're dating, there's going to be hell to pay. And yes, that will eventually probably happen, but I don't really want that happening now when we're just starting to date and we're just trying to figure out if this is even going to work before we even go broach this subject with our parents and with our friends who are all going to have a lovely time accepting that. So anyway, Pran is looking at the social media and he is troubled, he is worried. And as this happens, he gets kind of grumpy because Pat and him had gone out for lunch together, and they went out for lunch on the rooftop because they didn't want to go to a restaurant where their friends would see them. And so Pat was talking to him and going, you know, I really wish we could eat out like regular people that are dating. I mean, Ink and Pa get to go out for dinner and they're not even dating and I can't take you out for dinner. And Pran's like, yes, that's true, but we're here. We have our presents together. We have a nice view. It's okay. And so they have this little discussion. It's during this that Pat decides to try to snap a picture of him and Pran together with their faces showing and act like he's going to post on Instagram. And Pran immediately just kicks the phone to the floor of the roof that they're sitting on. And he's like, I don't want you doing this. And it's at this point that Pat gets really kind of sulky. And he's like, I wasn't really going to do it. I just was teasing you. I would never post you on Instagram because I do care about you. And I know that would bother you. And so it's at this point that Pat kind of gets sulky. Well, the next morning, Pat wakes up and Pran has already gone to his classes. Pran has left him a note by the alarm that says, you're not going to hit the alarm and snooze. You're going to get up and not be grumpy. And then he goes into the bathroom and there's his toothpaste on his toothbrush, and there is some toilet paper with a little arrow pointing down with a smiley face that says, don't be sulky. And then he goes and gets his breakfast, which Pran has made him and left on the coffee table. And it says after he's done eating, are you done being sulky yet? And then he leaves the house and there's a little sticky note by the door that says, you cannot leave unless you're done being sulky. And so anyway, that's how Pat wakes up the next day. It's during this also that Pran sees another picture on Instagram, because Pat takes a picture of the smiley face on Pran's door as he's leaving and puts hashtag just friends, which doesn't really help matters with Pran. And Pran gets kind of upset with him at the play rehearsal that day. And he's like, why did you post a picture of my door? And Pat's like, no one knows it's your door. It could be any door. And he goes, no one else has that door knocker, Pat. They're going to find out that it's my door. They're going to be asking questions about why you're taking pictures of my door when our families don't get along, our friends don't get along. They're going to be asking questions. And it's at this point that Pran just kind of gets grumpy. I totally get where Pran's coming from, though, because it's difficult. It's tricky to figure out how do you make everyone happy, and then to realize at some point you can't make everyone happy. You might as well quit trying. But Pran hasn't figured that out yet. He's still trying to juggle doing the right thing by his parents, doing the right thing by his friends, doing the right thing by the person he cares about. And it's a very difficult ball of wool to juggle. So anyway, he's sulky. It's at this point that the play director asks Pat and Pran to work on the what do you call it? Reading the play out loud. So Pat comes and rehearses the scene of playing the xylophone. I'm not really quite sure why the xylophone is so prominent in this episode, in this series. Maybe it's a very unique xylophone. I have to say, I don't know if it's from Thailand, and that's why it sounds a little different. And it also is very different in shape than a regular xylophone. But anyway, Pat is trying to say his lines, but he just comes up behind Pran as Pran is playing the xylophone like the character is supposed to. And he's like, and Pran's like, Pat, let me go. And Pat's like, I will not let you go until you quit being angry with me and quit playing your xylophone grumpily. And it's basically what do you say? There's more than one layer to that play scene. So anyway, by the end of it, Pran is laughing and he kind of gets that he needs to take things a little less seriously, maybe, with Pat. And my hair just came in. Oh well. But anyway, so we continue on with the story, and why in the interim is trying to figure out how to get Pa to date him. I am not quite sure why thinks that Pa would want to date him. I mean, no offense, I'm like, why has a rather repulsive personality. I really can't think of one redeeming quality of why in this whole series that I have seen. I mean, I'm sure that if you dug deep enough with that character, you would find something to like, but so far, nada. So anyway, Y has decided he's going to ask Ink who Pa is. And Ink gets kind of hacked with him. She's like, you know what? He asks her, what faculty is she in? What club? What is she living on campus or off campus? And Ink just kind of looks at him and goes, you know what? Why don't you just write a list of every question you want to ask? Because that's what you're doing right now. And so that kind of cuts Y off from doing that. So Y is kind of walking around the campus trying to find Pa so he can get her chat ID. I'm really not quite sure why he thinks that Pa would give him her chat ID. I mean, no offense, it's one of those things that you're going, you know, what would possess Pa to give Y her chat ID? He has no redeeming qualities and he's terrible at flirting. I mean, he just kind of makes people want to run instead of stay. So anyway, it's while he's going around trying to find her chat ID that he actually sees her, and he's with Pran, and Pran realizes that Pa is who Y is after, and he's like, I don't think you want to go get her chat ID. Why? I don't think that's a good idea, because Pa is very beautiful, and she has a lot of people, I'm sure, hitting on her. So you wouldn't stand a chance. Why? And it's at this point that Pat comes out and he's showing his sister his arm and going, I got mosquito bites, Pa, right here. I've got 5 of them. And Pa's like, oh, I'm sorry. And Y is like, oh, Pat's her boyfriend. I'm going to go deal with him. And Pran goes, you do not want to beat up Pat. Pat is her older brother. And Y realizes this fact, and he's like, oh, that's her brother. And Pran's like, yes, that's her brother. That's kind of why it's not advisable for you to date Pa, because Pat doesn't like you. You don't like Pat, and you're going to have to get along in order to date his sister. It's just kind of one of those things. So anyway, Y decides to go and get drunk, and Pran goes with him. And at the same time, Pat and Pa go home. Well, as Pat and Pa go home, Pat's dad finds out, because he's in the parking lot of the play rehearsal parking lot, and he realizes that Pat is actually skipping rugby practice to do the play, which for some reason Pat's father believes that since he was a great rugby player, his son should be a great rugby player. And the arts, such as plays, are not important. I don't understand this, but anyway, I think it's a little dangerous to live vicariously through our children. I mean, they're their own person. If they want to play rugby, go ahead, play rugby. If they want to go do a play, go ahead, do a play. It doesn't really matter. But anyway, Pat's dad basically says, I must have taught you to lie, and I'm gravely disappointed in you. And Pat's kind of like, you know, Pat has done pretty much everything his parents have ever asked him to do throughout his entire life. The same thing with Pran. They're really good kids. I think that's the other thing that makes this show kind of interesting, is even though their parents are pretty atrocious in their behavior, Pat and Pran really try hard to do the right thing, to be the right kind of person. And I think it really shows in how they handle this, because Pat immediately calls Pran up to talk to him about this situation, because he's thinking about dropping the play to please his dad so he can go practice rugby. It's at this point that Pran is drinking with Y, and he goes, you know what, I'm with a friend, we're out drinking. And Pat says, okay, I'm sorry I called. Well, about an hour or two later, you don't really know how long, he gets a call from Pran, and Pran says, what's going on? You sounded really troubled, and I just wanted to check on you to see what's going on. He says, well, my dad basically said he's disappointed in me. He's never said that before, and I'm having to deal with that fallout. I'm having to deal with the fact that my dad doesn't approve of me because I'm not playing rugby like he did. Would it be okay with you, you think, if I quit the play? And Pran says, well, the play is just getting ready to start. If you quit the play now, it's going to be really hard for everyone who's on the play. So what do you want to do? What do you think basically is the best thing? And it's at this point that he says, I want you to go to your balcony. And so Pat goes to his balcony, and Pran comes up because he has driven home that night to be near Pat to kind of check on him, etc. And it's this point that he says, he said, you came all the way home? Because he said, well, you sounded rather troubled, so I wanted to come check on you. And he said, are you doing better now? And Pat's like, I'm doing better. And he says, well, I'll give you a virtual hug. So they give each other virtual hugs across the balcony area. And this is, can I have something else? And he says, well, depends on what you want. And he says, I'd like your t-shirt so I can sleep next to it, because I miss having you by me, and having your t-shirt by me, it will at least smell like you're by me. And Pat's like, our friend's like, I don't get you, but okay, I'll throw over my t-shirt. So he throws over his t-shirt, and Pat says, do you want my t-shirt? And Pran goes, no, I'm really okay. I don't need your t-shirt. I've got your earbuds. That's all I really want. I don't want your t-shirt by me. So anyway, but Pat says, I don't think you have my earbuds. And what he did was he had taken Pran's earbuds that he gave him and made him gotten him a bag for them that has a double P on it. And then he threw it over to Pran. And Pran goes, why does this have a double P on it? And he says, well, it's I don't know why it has a double P on it. I really can't imagine why it would have a double P on it. And so anyway, that's kind of how that ends. It's at this point that I think they really realize that they do care about each other, Pat and Pran. But also they're sitting there going, we don't know how this is going to work out. And during this whole time, as Pat is in the play, Pran is working in the sound and music part, it's kind of adding, it's building up to this thing that where they're going to have to probably tell people what's going on or deal with the consequences of not. And I think it's kind of funny because fate often has a way of pushing you to say things that you maybe don't want to say, even though you know, it's just one of those things. It's like if you don't want to do something and you should, the universe often makes it so that it's impossible not to do that something. So anyway, it's during this time that as they're doing another rehearsal, Pran finds out that everyone's talking about who Pat might be dating, who that could be. And it's during this that Pran gets really upset. Pran marches down to Pat. He says, why do you keep posting pictures? Why do you keep putting just friends? I'm really, really tired of this. And why are you wearing my t-shirt? Because he's coming down and Pat is just there getting ready for his play, reading his lines, wearing the friend unfriend t-shirt. And Pat goes, I didn't post any pictures of you. He said, well, you posted my pins. And Pat goes, your pins. No one's going to think I'm dating you because I posted a picture of a desk with your pins on it that's here at the play. And I'm wearing your t-shirt because it makes me feel comfy and it makes me feel like you're close to me. It's not because I'm trying to be weird. It just makes me feel better. But if that bothers you, I'll take my t-shirt off. And so Pat, being somewhat precocious, I mean, no offense, I'm like, he's got a lot of emotions. Yes. He decides to throw off his t-shirt and go rehearse without it. And this kind of makes the play director go, Pat, why are you not wearing your t-shirt? This is kind of weird. This is not in the script. I'm just saying it's kind of strange that you're not wearing your shirt. And Pat goes, well, my shirt smelled weird. And so Pat decides to play his xylophone very angrily. And it's during this that Pran kind of thinks back to everything that has happened that has led to this point. And at the end of it, he goes backstage with Pat and he says, I'm sorry. They both say I'm sorry at the same time. And Pat says, and Pran says, I shouldn't have done that to you. I shouldn't have made you upset that way. I shouldn't have scolded you for wanting to post on social media because that's something that's important to you. And if someone does find out, I guess we'll deal with the fallout, etc. And it's this point that Pat says, well, I just want people to know I'm taken, that I'm happy, and I'm with you. That's kind of what social media is for, is to brag about your good things in life. And it's at this point that Pat goes, yeah, I think that's important for you. And Pat says, does that bother you, Pran? Because I can stop posting to Instagram. And he goes, well, it bothers me, but it's important to you, and you're my boyfriend, so I guess I need to work through this issue. And it's this point that Pat goes, oh, excuse me, you said something right there. Can you replay that, please? And Pran goes, do we really have to go through this again? And Pat goes, I would like to hear what you just said again, because I'm a little hard of hearing today. And so Pran goes, well, you're my boyfriend. So there we go. And it's at this point that Pat takes Pran's hand and goes, yay, you finally said it. And then he takes a picture of them holding hands. And then he asks Pran to give him a hug. And Pran says, I will give you a hug, but you're going to put your shirt on because you smell and you're stinky and you're sweaty. And I do not want to hug you without your shirt on. So you will put back on the t-shirt before I hug you. And he kind of moves his hand clear back, like, I don't want to be near you without your t-shirt on. And it's at this point that Pat puts on his t-shirt, but then he decides that he's going to take his t-shirt and put it over Pran's head because he's feeling like that would be a good idea. And the stage collapses and Pat and Pran are just standing there with everyone watching from the play and taking pictures with their cell phones. So Y is at the sound booth, and the other guy, who I can't remember his name, who is Pat's friend, supposedly. I don't know if we should call these friends. They're kind of like these destructive people that you happen to be acquainted with, is in the audience. And so everyone knows that Pat and Pran are kind of, they like one another, I guess you would say. And their friends are very upset about this. And the next episode looks a little difficult. I don't know why we always have to have a difficult episode in these dramas. Why can't we just have a smooth running drama where nobody gets upset about anything? I mean, that would be an interesting one to watch. But anyway, Pat's friends, Pran's friends, all of them decide that they hate Pat and Pran because they're dating one another. I think this is quite ironic because in this episode, there is a little side note where Pat is at rugby practice and his friends think that he's dating a girl from architecture faculty, and they think that's wonderful. But when they find out he's dating Pran, they think somehow he's terrible, dating the enemy. I'm like, I'm not going to use the word I'm thinking, but you can think what I'm thinking. I'm like, who were your parents and why did they not raise you to have some decent compass within you that tells you you treat everyone equally? But anyway, I will calm down now. So that's going to be kind of a downer, I think. Also, it's during this time that Pat says that he can basically post that he's not dating Pran, if that would maybe make things better between their friends. I think the thing that's most interesting about Pat and Pran is Pat is kind of a wild card. You think he's kind of all jokes and funny and not a lot of substance. But I actually think his character is a bit more courageous in many, many ways than Pran's. Pat's character, when that thing happens on the balcony and they have that passionate moment, Pat goes to great lengths to try to sort that out with Pran, for better or for worse. He gets on the architecture camping trip. He pursues Pat for 3 days, or Pran for 3 days, to try to figure out what Pran is thinking. That takes a lot of matzah, I have to say. I mean, it's not everyone who, after something like that, would pursue someone and go, you know what, I don't care whether we're together or not, but I want to sort this out with you. I want to figure out what you're thinking, and I want you to know what I'm thinking, because this is not something I want to just leave in the ether. And I think that's what I find most interesting about Pat is, yes, he's jovial. Yes, he jokes a lot. Yes, he seems to take the world less seriously than Pran. But I think in many ways, it's a facade. I think Pat is actually quite mature, even though he doesn't act like it. And the reason that he jokes, the reason that he laughs, etc., is oftentimes to kind of relieve Pran, who is way, way too pent up. In many ways, I think he and Pat are the same in that situation. It's just Pran shows it more. Pran freaks out visibly. Pran sits there and goes, I don't know how this is going to work. Why even try? And Pat sits there and goes, you know what? I don't know how this is going to work either, but I don't think that should keep us from thinking about certain things. And I think that's kind of what sets his character apart. I like both of them for different reasons. I like Pat because even though he seems jovial and jokey and all that, he really does go the extra mile for Pran. And I like Pran because Pran really tries to think through, how is this going to affect someone? Will this hurt the person I care about? Because God forbid I'd ever do that. And I think that's kind of what I like about the two of them, is that level of back and forth care that you see between the two. I mean, they really are, I think, good friends, even more than they are people who care about one another. I've got to do another recording here, just a minute. There we go. Okay. And I think that's what I find interesting about this series is they both have each other's backs and they surprise one another with how they are able to be there for each other. I think that's the most interesting thing about these two characters. Now, does it mean that it's going to work out for them? It's JMTV. It's a Thai BL drama. Of course it's going to work out. I mean, let's face it. But Does that mean it's going to be all sunshine and roses? No, not at all. But, I also think that this is a wonderful example of Pat's parents and Pran's parents need to figure out how to get along. Whether their sons were dating or not, that's really beside the point. And their son's dating is just a bit of more impetus that they've got to figure out how to get along, because they've lived in strife for 20 years over stuff that really they should have just dealt with years ago. And their sons are going to make them, through their relationship, have to deal with that. I think it's kind of interesting. It will be kind of unique to see how the sons deal with it. I could really see Pat sitting there and going, Dad, Mom, if you don't like Pran, that's fine, but I'm still going to be with Pran. Now, Pran, I think that would be a lot harder for him to do, simply because he'd sit there and go, I don't want to hurt my parents. I don't want to hurt my family. I want to try to be there for them. And I don't want to hurt Pat either, but I'm supposed to care for them even longer than I've cared for Pat. And so I think Pran would have that all running through his head, or Pat would be sitting there going, I want to care for my folks too, but if they're stupid enough to not see how cool Pran is, I really don't care. So anyway, and not that he wouldn't care, but I think he would sit there and go, I care about Pran more than I care about my parents. The other thing I really like about this series is I like that Pran, no offense at all to the actor who plays him, Nanan. I think Nanan is great, but I like that they don't dress Pran like a cool kid. I like that he kind of just throws on whatever he happens to have in his closet. I like that he always is wearing things that are like 2 to 3 sizes too big for him, because he honestly doesn't really care about his appearance. And I like that even though he is that way, Om's character, Pat, likes him. He thinks, oh, you're cute. You have dimples. Oh, you're cute. You're being so funny in the way that you're trying to be so serious. And I love that Pat really doesn't think about him as, he's not going after the kid who's snappily dressed. He's not going after the kid who is very popular. He's going after Pran because they have a backstory. They have a history. They know each other really well. And it just happened to evolve to another level. And I think that's kind of what makes this story interesting. But that is my review of episode 8 of Bad Buddy, on the first vlog of our podcast. Check it at the round table. Bye.